In this episode, I'd like to show you something I think is very cool. It's a tool that's been on my wish list for a long time, but for a few reasons, it didn't ever feel like the right time to actually buy one. Not till now. This is the Topdon TC001 Thermal Camera. And full disclosure, Topdon sent me this free of charge. They didn't specifically ask for a review, but I think they were just keen to have people see this used in a setting where it's going to get a lot of use. But I'm so impressed with the device, I wanted to make a video demonstrating how useful a thermal imaging camera can be for repairing vintage tech, and just how good this one is at what it does. All the following opinions and observations are my own. I'm going to demonstrate just how useful this can be by hopefully repairing this Commodore 64. So let's dive in. The TC001 is light with a case that looks like it's made of aluminium and could take a knock. It's quite well made. The USB-C type connector is nice and long, but with just about every phone I've tried, it's not quite long enough to be used with a case fitted to the phone. Which is a shame, as these thin modern phones are slippery. Inside the dinky carry case is a USB extension lead, and I've taken to using the camera plugged into a phone via this cable. It isn't perfect like this. I want to hold the camera this way up, but in use the software defaults to displaying the image the other way up. It's easy enough to rotate the image, but that setting doesn't persist. The other slight negative with the USB connection is that while USB-C is probably the most robust of the different types of USB, it's still a lot of dongle hanging out the bottom of your phone. If that took a heavy blow or was sat on, some severe damage would result. But just because something is delicate doesn't mean it's not worth having. I've already downloaded the Topdon TC001 app from Google Play, and when I plug the unit into the phone, it automatically launches and presents you with the main menu. At the bottom, personal information is actually more useful than it sounds, containing a very useful FAQ and built-in manual section. Don't often get a manual built into a device. It's quite cool. As well as a section for changing the temperature correction settings. This gets outside my pay grade, but I believe that certain materials have different levels of emissivity, so it's useful to have this set accordingly if you're measuring the temperature of food, for instance. You can set up a customized mode to save settings for different use cases. Quite handy. The gallery is what you would expect. Temperature monitoring is where you can set up different measuring methods, such as area and spot, and see how they change over a period of time. And at the top is thermal imaging, and this is where the fun happens. For my use case, I don't need something that's super accurate, so I won't be messing around with the emissivity settings. What I need is something that can tell me how hot something is compared to the things around it, or maybe how cold. Now, I won't lie to you, a thermal camera isn't going to diagnose every type of fault in, say, a C64, but add this to the range of other diagnostic tools we retro repairers use, and it's going to save me a lot of time and wasted work. Not all faults will cause something to heat up abnormally. A faulty chip can fail in a number of ways, some of which will cause no difference in the temperature of the chip when compared to a perfectly working one. But often a faulty chip will either go dead short inside or even partially short, causing the chip to heat up, sometimes drastically, sometimes only by a few degrees more than its normal temperature. Sometimes the chip might just lose power altogether, which would show up just as well with this camera. The normal way I start to diagnose a C64 is to switch it on and see what it's displaying. If it's displaying a black screen, as in it's displaying an image but just a black one, then I jump straight to a dead test cartridge to see if that would give me a clue to the fault. Dead test is another great and essential tool, but it can be unreliable. The white flashes on the screen indicate a faulty memory chip, and the number of flashes indicate which one that might be. But there are any number of other chips on the board that could be causing that memory to appear faulty. The chief bogeyman amongst these other suspects is the PLA. When I get a flash code showing me that dead test thinks there's a faulty RAM chip, it's very tempting to just pull that chip and test it out of the board. But so far, for me, this has been right about 50% of the time. So 4 flashes, and according to the chart, that means that U23 is possibly a faulty chip. But is it? At this point, I'd normally start feeling for a hot chip, whether that be the PLA or a suspect RAM IC. And if the offending silicon was burning hot, that would be enough to go on. But if I'm honest, that doesn't happen as often as you might hope. In fact, I can only think of a couple of times I've positively identified a faulty chip after burning my fingers on it. So what about this thermal camera then? What can that see? Switching on the C64, you can clearly see on the display the middle of each of the chips starting to warm up. The colour representation here is not absolute. Instead, it shows a range from the coolest it detects to the warmest, displaying the hot stuff in reds and yellows and the cold with shades of blue. There are other colour schemes you can use, but I think sticking with this one gives a good indication of what I need to know. On this side of the board, you can see the VIC-2 glowing like the sun. It's the hottest chip here and could definitely use a heatsink going forward. If this gets fixed, I'll sort that out later. Right, on the business side of the board, we have from top left 2 CIA chips, then the 3 ROM chips, the CPU, and then the SID sound chip. The CPU and SID are shown to be kicking out decent heat, but feeling these with my insensitive fingers, they just feel mildly warm to me. Below the SID is the PLA, a very common point of failure and a suspect with this fault, but in this case it seems to be at normal temperature. In this area of the board are a bunch of logic chips, and these 8 chips here are the 4164 DRAM chips. That one glowing in the middle there is the suspect U23. Now the temperature of that chip after this machine has been switched on for a few minutes is about 43 degrees. And the ones next to it are 32. And if I feel the faulty chip with my finger, I can barely feel it's even warm. The chips on either side actually do feel mildly colder, but that could just be confirmation bias. I don't think I would have picked this up on feel alone. So the sensible thing to do next is heat up the desoldering gun, pop that chip out and stick it in the tester to see if it's faulty. Cue the music! Okay, time to spin the wheel. If it turns red, it's faulty. I don't remember the colour it goes if it's okay. Let's just say not red. And there we have it, a broken chip spotted by my new Topdon thermal camera. So what about those reasons for not buying a thermal camera sooner? Well, up till now the choice has been a bit limited in this field. The market leader was probably, still is to be fair, FLIR. And the main thing that put me off of those was the resolution. The resolution of their budget thermal imaging camera is 80 by 60. Using some clever mixing with normal vision cameras, nothing wrong with a FLIR camera, I'm sure. I know many people that swear by them, but that low resolution was always stopping me from jumping in. Step up the Topdon series of cameras. The whole range can boast a much more useful resolution of 256 by 192, which doesn't sound like a lot compared to the megapixel phone cameras we take for granted these days. But we're not looking for that much detail, just enough to make sense of a picture. The bigger brothers to the TC001 are the TC004 and the TC005. Honestly, just call it a name. These pistol-type standalone thermal cams don't require a mobile phone, and the price reflects that. The TC001, being plugged into a nice posh phone, will give a better display than the pistol-type cameras. Trading off the convenience of an all-in-one unit is going to be down to your use case. As I'm going to be almost exclusively using this at my workbench, the TC001 is going to suit me just fine. Although I probably would have appreciated the camera mount option of the bigger brothers. This will be a tool I'll use as an initial diagnostic option for every repair going forward. Thank you Topdon for sending me this. I really appreciate it. Excellent. Let's stick a socket in there and see if this works. Suppose I better check it first. These are from Adam Commodore lad, and he don't make mistakes. These are new, newish. 2021. New. Pretty new to me. Green. Green is good. Ready? Ha! It's still broke. But it's less broke than it was. This is... Squeak, squeak, squeak. Get it on back on there. Inside. The normal way I start to diagnose... start recording. The normal way I shake it. Rattles. Doesn't rattle. Doesn't really rattle.